Hey friends, it's Alex from Vulture Culture, and today we're going to do a little experiment. I recorded two versions of the same synthwave riff, one with the Korg Prologue 16-voice analog synthesizer that costs about $1,500 on Sweetwater right now, and then also one version with the free TYRELL N6 plugin by UHE that costs nothing. Do you guys think you can tell the difference? Okay, so I'm going to play the song back-to-back, version A and version B, all right? So which do you think was done with the expensive analog hardware, and which do you think was done with the free plugin? I'm gonna play it one more time. Before I answer, if you're brave, post which one you think is the analog synth in the comments before you continue watching this video. Scout's honor. So if you guess version A, you are wrong. Version A was done with the TYRELL N6 and version B was done with the Korg Prologue. All right, even if you guessed correctly, I want you to ask yourself, is one version actually superior to the other, or is there just a difference? You can definitely hear a difference in the leads because I wasn't able to match those identically, or rather, I didn't even try. I mean, honestly, I put like 20 minutes worth of work into this, and I was just like, I'm gonna do a triangle lead, a sawtooth pad, and a square bass. And I wasn't trying to, if I had put some effort in, I would have been able to get them very, very close. The TYRELL's not even emulating the Prologue in any way. They're really not, they couldn't be more different in a sense. And the final result is shockingly similar. There is reverb and delay. Both of the dry layers are being sent to, so that changes things. And of course there's the drums. The whole point of this is by the time you're in the mix, can you say that one's even better than the other? Which brings me to the point of this video. I think that hardware synths are a luxury item. I'm not saying they're a waste of money, but when you compare a $1,500 analog synthesizer to a free plugin, you can download it right now in the description of the video. I want you to ask yourself, what are you really getting with this? You're getting knobs is what you're getting. But of course they make MIDI controllers with knobs too. Honestly, after doing this comparison of a $1,500 purchase I made versus a $0 purchase I made for the TYRELL N6 plugin, can I say that this sounds better? No, I cannot. And that sucks considering I spent all that money. Am I regretting the purchase? Not really. I do think there is a place for hardware, but it's kind of in the place where it's like the same place as luxury watches or luxury cars, which is you don't really ever need to spend the money on something like that. And here's the reason I'm making this video. If you spend any time on YouTube looking at synth stuff, you'll know that right now hardware synths are probably bigger than they've ever been. And the reason is because of the whole DAW-less movement. The DAW-less movement is comprised of people who are sort of rejecting the idea of using a computer to make electronic music, and they just want to be able to do it with all hardware. And here's my opinion on that. If you have a lot of money to spend and you're financially well off, maybe you don't have to work all that much, or maybe you have some like high-paying salary job, then by all means, indulge yourself. Go down the path of having all hardware. But the thing that scares me about these videos and the culture that surrounds it is that they're aimed largely at beginners. And I think the entire message for beginners that there's any reason to go into hardware, I think is just wrong. And I mean wrong morally, because beginners, you know, when you're starting anything, you want to learn from people who you trust, people whose voices you respect, and you want to hear what they have to say, and then you're going to spend your hard-earned money that maybe you don't have very much of on things. And when it comes to synthesizers and electronic music in general, there's no comparison of going in the box versus out of the box in terms of your financials. To illustrate the point, the version of the song I did with TYRELL, which is free, I used reverb Reaper. That costs $60, but you can try it out for free for 2 months. I use Satala, which is a free drum sampler plugin, and I use $10 worth of samples from Ghost Syndicate from the Neon Synthwave drum pack that they have. So that's a total of something like $75 total spent to make that song. And then there is the version I did with the Prologue, and that would be $1,575 to make that version of the song. Do you feel like that version of the song was $1,500 better than the other version? As people who have YouTube channels, and mine's very small, so take this with a grain of salt, but I feel like we have a responsibility to the people who watch these videos to actually try to help them along their path. I'm not saying all the YouTubers who review every new hardware synth as they come out are doing a disservice because they're doing a service. We want to know about that stuff. But there's like this implicit thing hidden underneath that, which is that you need this type of stuff to make electronic music, and you simply do not. There are free plugins that get you all of the way there that sound amazing. And then there's plugins like Omnisphere, which are incredible, and they cost $500, but that's still a third of what I've spent here. And Omnisphere is virtually limitless as far as sound design goes. So if you're a beginner, I highly fucking recommend not to buy any hardware other than what you need to get your DAW going, like an audio in-out. The thing is that the YouTube algorithm is set up in such a way as to monetize videos about products. And here's how this works. When people have to spend money on things, it causes them pain in a way. Maybe not pain like when a nail goes through your hand, but a kind of pain. And so whenever I have to make a purchase, what do? I go on YouTube and I search for reviews and I search for comparison videos like this versus that. The reason I'm doing this is because I'm trying to take myself out of pain in a sense so that I know when I make a purchase, it's a good purchase. I worked damn hard for that money and I don't want to spend money frivolously. I don't want to just get anything. I want to get the right thing for me and something that's a good value. The other side of the equation is the companies that make the hardware want to use your YouTube channel as a way to promote their product. So they send a lot of YouTubers out the hardware for free. Most of the time they have to send it back to them after they're done reviewing it. But what that does is there's always a new hardware synth to review or a new hardware gizmo. And there's always people who want to see it because they're in this pain point. It's not sexy to sell what I'm trying to sell you right now, which is free stuff, right? For some reason, we have this thing in our brain which makes us feel like if it's free, it can't be as good as the expensive real thing. And I just don't agree with that. I think that was probably true in the 80s. I think it was probably true in the 90s. But today, no way. The software is just as good. And where things sound different, it's important to say they sound different, not better. So does this synth sound different than TYRELL? Yeah, sure. That would be true if I compared TYRELL to a different software synthesizer, even if I compared it to Omnisphere. But does it sound worse or better? I don't know. I don't really think it sounds either. I think it just sounds different. The thing hidden underneath those YouTube reviews is that the whole algorithm and system is set up to conspire to make you think you need that stuff. And you don't. You just don't. I mean, if this test shows you anything, you need like $100 worth of software can take you exactly as far as this analog synth can. It doesn't mean that analog synths aren't cool. It just means that, hey, if you're interested in making music, which is what we buy these fucking things for, is to make music, you don't need hardware at all. You could buy a $100 MIDI controller and you'd be good to go. They make really good ones. This Arturia MIDI controller I have right here, this Mini Lab, this guy right here, it's great. It's got wood paneling on the side. It looks beautiful. You've got little drum pads you can do stuff with. You've got a bunch of knobs. It's $100. I mean, it's just like, it's crazy what you can get nowadays. And I have to say, as much as I love this thing, when I listen to those two songs back to back, it makes it feel really that I just spent all of that money on something that's effectively a toy. When it comes to making music, it's not helping me make music. If we're being honest, it's not, because the TYRELL version was quick and easy to use too. If anything, it's slowing me down because I have to record each track separately, and with TYRELL, I can just have infinite instances open in the DAW. So my message is, if you're a beginner and you want to get into electronic music, buy yourself a good MIDI controller like an Ovation or an Arturia. 49 keys probably best. I like like 61 keys just because I like the extra range. So maybe you splurge and spend $200 on the 61 key MIDI controller. Get a good I/O. Focusrite makes fine ones. Presonus, all of them are great. Get Reaper for 60 bucks or whatever DAW you want. But I mean, Reaper's $60 and it's amazing. It's actually probably the best DAW out there. Don't get sucked into the hardware rabbit hole. There's a time and a place for that. Maybe if you're like me and you've been making music for over 10 years, maybe it's time that you go, hey, you know, maybe I'll try this whole hardware thing out. But you got to recognize that, like, I've made a lot of money off of music. I was a professional DJ. Like, I can justify a luxury purchase like this to myself. Maybe I'm crazy. But if you're, the thing I think we all have to remember is beginners have to make a lot of purchases in the beginning, and you make bad purchases because you don't know what you're doing. So to tell people like, oh, your first synthesizer should be this, even if it's a relatively cheap product, this $600, $800, $700 synthesizer, I just think that's wrong. I don't think that's what we should be messaging to people. I think what we should be messaging to people is, hey, beginners, this is the path. You want to use this guy right here, this computer, right? You already own a computer that's probably powerful enough to run a DAW with some VSTs in it. It doesn't take that much. Some VSTs are, you know, can suck up some CPU, but you know, your computer's probably fine. Whatever you're watching this on, yeah, I mean, you can use an iPad to make music now. So if you're watching this on an iPad, it'll probably work too. This isn't any one person's fault. Like, it's not the YouTube reviewer's fault that this is how the system works. And no one's like sat back and dreamt this up like an evil demon was like, oh, this is how we'll set it up to screw beginners. No, it's just the natural thing that the world of synthesizers and YouTube have interfaced. There's just been this natural point where it's occurred, where it's become largely hardware driven. But that has more to do with the fact that free VSTs just do not feel as sexy as expensive analog hardware. But at the end of the day, that's not what matters. It's what you do with it. And if you write good songs, you write good melodies, you have cool chords, and you can get good with using EQ and compression, that's what counts. That's what matters. That's what at the end of the day is going to separate your music from somebody else's. So this is supposed to be a hopeful message, even if it's coming across a little cynically. Maybe it's cynical just because I spent $1,500 fucking dollars. I want you guys to get out there and make amazing music, and I want my channel to help you do that. If I'm, you know, doing my job the best I can, the goal would be to give you reviews and ideas that help you make music. And so even though I'm covering a $1,500 synth, the message I want you to get is a message of, hey, you know, this is cool, listen to the sounds, but you can do this exact same stuff at home with free software until you're at a point where you can afford something like this. I just don't want any beginner to get turned off from making music because they're like, well, I don't have $1,000 to spend on this synthesizer, so there's no way I can make music. That's just not true. So I know some of you guys are going to be pissed off at what I just said. That's fine. Let me know how you feel in the comments below. If you found this video helpful, please like it and subscribe to the channel. And because I'm a complete fucking hypocrite, next week I'll be showing you a video on the new hardware synthesizer I just got. So I'll see you then. Bye.